Okay, so this is part two of our video recording discussion on carbohydrates. Um, let's start with the topic of diabetes mellitus. Of course, we will have a more thorough discussion about this disease when you reach the nutrition therapy nga subject. But yeah, since this disease is relevant with carbohydrates, specifically chronic excess consumption of carbohydrates, then it's warranted that this topic is included here. TM is a disorder of energy metabolism due to failure of insulin to regulate blood glucose. So this results in hyperglycemia. Ang iyahang primary biochemical manifestation is hyperglycemia. Hyperglycemia is excess, uh, excess glucose in the blood. Okay, so acute symptoms include thirst, increased urine production, and hunger. So long-term consequences include increased risk of heart disease, kidney disease, blindness, and neural damage. We have two forms, type 1 and type 2. But I think nag-skip ko, no? Diri di ay ta magsugod. There is a regulation of blood glucose. The body, tries to maintain homeostasis. The body has a lot to maintain actually, no? And one of that is homeostasis of the blood glucose. So the body would try to keep the blood glucose normal, the levels of blood glucose normal all the time. Okay? So the body would not want for you to experience hyper and hypo, which are both extremes, no, of blood glucose imbalance. So when you say hyperglycemia, um, it's elevated blood glucose, and hypoglycemia, it's low blood glucose. So the body has mechanisms, no, to uh, if ever these disturbances happen, then the body has mechanisms to bring the levels up or down to the normal levels. Okay, and the organ system responsible for that is the endocrine system, which involves the pancreas. So the pancreas is the organ that releases these two important hormones in the regulation of blood glucose, and that is insulin and glucagon. Okay. When the blood glucose levels are high, such as in the case of hyperglycemia or high blood glucose level, the pancreas would be stimulated to release insulin, not glucagon but insulin, because insulin would instruct these cells, no, to take up glucose from the blood. Since i-absorb man ni cells ang glucose in response to insulin, then mugamay ang blood level sa glucose. 'Di ba? Kay thanks to insulin, no, these cells are now able to take up or to absorb glucose from the bloodstream, thereby reducing the levels of blood glucose. Okay? And another effect of insulin, aside from instructing the cells to absorb glucose from the blood, insulin is also an anabolic hormone. That means it is responsible for creating larger molecules from smaller molecules. So in carbohydrates, the large carbohydrate molecule is glycogen. So insulin also stimulates the cells to join these glucose molecules together and form glycogen. Okay, so insulin stimulates liver and muscle cells to store glucose as glycogen. Diba? So, mao man natong i-discuss sa part 1. And yeah, this is also a mechanism of the body to store excess carbohydrates at that time. Okay? Kay since daghan kayo blood glucose, so dili na siya pwede. So kaning sobra-sobra nga glucose diri i-store na lang as glycogen para magamit siya no in the future if ever basig magkulang na sa tag energy, so at least natay stored carbohydrates in the form of glycogen. Okay? But when the complete opposite happens, if hypoglycemia happens, then that's low blood glucose. So insulin is not released, but instead it's the hormone called glucagon that is released by the same organ, by pancreas. So glucagon stimulates liver cells to break down glycogen to glucose. So complete opposite po iyahang buhaton. While si insulin iyahang maghimog glycogen, si glucagon mag-breakdown og glycogen. So ang products is glucose, and that glucose is released into the bloodstream, thereby increasing the blood levels of glucose. So, na-restore ni glucagon ang normal level sa blood glucose. Okay? So, as you can notice, no, both of these hormones would bring up or bring down the blood levels of glucose to the normal levels. Depende kung unsang type of disturbance ang nahitabo. Okay? So, glucagon is a catabolic hormone. That means it breaks down glycogen to the smaller molecules, which are the building blocks of carbohydrates, which are glucose. Okay? So yeah. The cells in the pancreas that produce insulin are called the beta cells. And then the cells that are responsible for the production of glucagon are called alpha cells. Okay? So that's just a recap no on your ANAFI, di ba? Mao man ang inyong di-discuss. Okay. So the DM is a disease no that is mainly characterized by maintained hyperglycemia. So ano man taas ang blood glucose permi sa naay diabetes. Okay? Tungod na siya sa mechanisms that are involved in the two forms of DM, which are type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So the type 1 diabetes accounts for about 10% of the cases. So this is a much rarer form of diabetes. And this occurs when beta cells of the pancreas are destroyed. Remember that the beta cells are the cells of the pancreas that produce insulin. So if these cells are destroyed, then insulin can no longer be synthesized because there's no other structure in the body that produces insulin other than your beta cells. So if these are destroyed, then dili na ta makaproduce og insulin. So just imagine if katong naay mga DM nga type 1, they would need like constant external insulin injections. So, of course, naaman may mga kailang mga celebrities no nga type 1 diabetic. So, kato sila, magdala gyud na sila permi og insulin injections para in case nga mo taas ilahang blood glucose into a very dangerous level, then pwede ra sila mag-inject of insulin to bring down the uh, levels back to the normal. Okay? So, that's the reason nga nung taas ang blood glucose because wala na may insulin, wala na may mag-instruct sa cell nga, huy, mag-absorb dapat ka og blood glucose para mo reduce ang level. Okay? Wala na may insulin, wala na yung mag-instruct ka na. So, the blood glucose levels would just be high unless, insulin injections are given. Okay? Type 2 diabetes, the same yapon siya sa type 1 nga hyperglycemia, but lahi ang reason nga nung nagka-hyperglycemia ang patient. Okay, why? Because of the phenomenon called insulin resistance or insulin insensitivity. Okay, of course, you know now what the word insensitive means, di ba? Dili mo respond, dili kabalo mo sense sa environment, numb, kumbaga, insensitive. Diba? So that's how does the body cells become in respect to insulin when someone has diabetes type 2. because ang ilang cells dili na mo respond, insensitive na sa insulin. Their beta cells are functioning well. They produce insulin, pero dili lang gyud mo respond ang ilang body cells to insulin. Okay? Due to some reason, nahimong insensitive ang body cells. So bahala na daghan kaayog na release diha nga insulin, since insensitive naman ang lawas to insulin, then di ra gyapon maabsorb ang glucose. Diba? Remember that the only way for the glucose to be absorbed in most of the body cells is through insulin. So if walay insulin in case of type 1, or if dili mo respond ang body cells sa insulin, then dili maabsorb ang glucose sa cells. So that's why taas ra permi ang blood glucose levels. Okay? Yeah. Occurs when cells of body are unable to respond to insulin. Okay? So, insulin secretion increases in an attempt to compensate. So, this leads to hyperinsulinemia. So, patingala din ang pancreas nga nung taas gyapon ang blood glucose despite nga sige siya release og insulin. So, that's why mag-lead siya to hyperinsulinemia, which is also not good. Okay? So, what is the cause of insulin resistance? Nganong mahimo mang insensitive ang cells? The first reason is chronic consumption, long-term consumption of high-calorie dense foods, high sugar foods, and high saturated fat foods. So, in other words, improper nutrition or poor nutrition. So that's why your DM um, is a nutritional disorder, technically speaking. Because most DM cases, okay, 90% of the DM cases are type 2. And one of the main reasons is faulty diet. Diba? So, madaot ang cells manggod na manggod diha nga naka-embed sa cells sa atong body, sa cell membrane, which are called insulin receptors. So, insulin receptors are structures in the cell membranes that are responsible for detecting insulin. So sila actually ang mahimong insensitive. So bisag daghan kayog insulin diha, dili na niya ma-detect, dili na niya ma-receive. So tungod sa faulty diet, maka-create dayon og daghan nga free radical sa lawas that is called oxidative stress. Okay? And kanang mga free radicals iyahang i-destroy ang insulin receptors, leading to insulin resistance. Other cause would be lack of physical activity, okay, sedentary lifestyle, inadequate sleep. So in other words, unhealthy lifestyle. Diba? So no wonder why, DM cases are continually growing over the years, because look at our lifestyle, diba? Okay? So inana siya, guys. So you as future registered nutritionist dietitians have an essential role in the prevention and even management of DM. So that's why very important yun that yun kaayo tong expertise, no, in treating this disorder, because it's a nutritional disorder in the first place. Okay? Um you know that hypoglycemia is opposite atong hyper. It's a dramatic drop in blood glucose. So symptoms similar to an anxiety attack, rapid weak heartbeat, sweating, anxiety, hunger, trembling, and weakness. Although this is rare in healthy people, this only happens when, of course, you did not eat for quite some time, and then nag-engage in kag very intense physical activity. So your blood glucose levels would dramatically drop, causing this hypoglycemic uh, signs and symptoms. And this would also occur in poorly managed diabetes, like um, wala na match no ang insulin dose uh, with the meal. For example, taas ra kayo ang insulin dose, ang insulin injection sa gikaon nga carbohydrates. So, naay unmatching nga mahitabo and mag-result na siya to dramatic drop of blood glucose levels. So, it's very important no, to accurately match no, the insulin dose with the carbohydrates in the diet. So that's why you need ang dietitian in that respect. Okay? The GI. Okay, you might have frequently heard this term. So what is this term all about? So the GI is actually a measure of the extent to which a food raises blood glucose concentration and elicits an insulin response compared to pure glucose. So mauni siya ang measure no nga uh, the measure that would tell whether this food ang iyang effect sa blood glucose levels is makapataas yun siya. Okay? Because there are other foods nga if kauno nato dili ra kayo taas ang blood glucose nato after nato sila gikaon na mga inana nga mga foods and those foods are called foods of low glycemic index. Okay? But naapod katong foods nga after nato sila gikaon no taas kaayo ang pag-increase sa blood glucose levels. And mao na sila nga mga foods are called high GI food. Okay? Parehas aning white bread, this has high glycemic index. So, expect nga after nimo ni siya gikaon, mutaas yun kaayo dramatically ang imong blood glucose levels. Compared to, for example, kaning mga low GI nga after nimo sila gikaon kay wala ra murag gamay ra ang increase sa blood glucose levels. So therefore, this metric of foods no uh, in respect sa ilahang effect sa blood glucose level is very important in the management of DM because in DM in diabetes mellitus kinahanglan no nga controlled ang blood glucose levels. Dili pwede nga fluctuating ang iyang blood glucose levels. And definitely dili pwede nga hyperglycemia na lang permi ang iyang blood glucose levels. So, as part of the healthcare team that manages diabetic patients, ang ato goal as a dietitian is to make sure nga controlled iyang blood glucose levels through diet. So that's why this is very uh, important utilization no kaning GI. Okay? So parehas ani kani siya nga figure shows the response no of the blood glucose level to consumption of bread which is very high in starch. And remember that starch is highly digestible. So after digestion glucose ra na ang maabsorb. So that's why after 30 minutes no you would expect the rise of blood glucose level up to 2.5 millimolars per liter. Okay, taas kayo ang pag-increase sa blood glucose levels after eating these high GI foods. Labi na siguro if refined siya, di ba? Dili whole grain. Kung whole grain ni siya, gamay ra gyud na because low GI food man ang low grain nga mga cereal products. Okay? Compared to this one nga low GI, kaning beans siguro ni siya, after consuming this food, gamay ra ang increase. Like, tama na diri sa 1.0 millimolars per liter after 30 minutes. So, yeah, di ba? Mao ni siyang effect sa different types of food according to their glycemic index. This is also another illustration no, of the GI. Okay? As you can see, glucose has 100, of course, because it's pure glucose, di ba? And yeah. Okay? Ang atong white rice, dira na siya nabilong sa high GI food gihapon. Mga around 70 siguro atong rice, no? Compared sa brown rice nga, it's only 55. Di ba? So, Better gyud ang brown rice in controlling blood glucose levels. Okay? So, the theory is that low GI will minimize dramatic fluctuations in blood glucose. Okay, so this reduces the need for insulin secretion and may help manage type 2 diabetes. The evidence is very high because this has been proven by a lot of high quality research. So how do we translate the theory into practice? Aside from the obvious action nga dapat ang diet sa diabetic patient kay puro low GI food. I-avoid na to ang mga high GI food. Okay? So aside from that, we can employ small and frequent feedings. So, small and frequent feedings, as what I've explained last time, involves cutting or dividing three large meals into uh, into six smaller meals. Okay, six to seven smaller meals. Okay, so instead nga dinagko bulky nga meal, tungaon na sila into much smaller meals pero kanunay, di ba? Inana siya because the effect of that to the blood glucose levels is similar to that of consuming low GI foods. Dili ra kayo mo fluctuate ang blood glucose levels ana if mao natong strategy. Okay. Aside from that, you know that fruits have sugar, di ba? And in planning meals for diabetics, kinahanglan nga ang fruits idungan nato with meals. Why? Para ma-dilute ang simple sugars. So therefore, dili ra kayo siya magpataas og blood glucose levels kay nahalo siya with other food components sa imong meal. Compared to if, for example, gi kaon nimo ang fruit separately from meal like alone, like as a snack, then after 30 minutes ana taas kayo ang pag-rise na sa blood glucose levels nimo. So, not just fruit but also high GI foods or even moderately GI foods. If ever na amang galing na siya sa meal plan din, dapat ihalo na siya with other foods, with low GI foods para ma ma-cancel out ba ang effect, ma-dilute, and ang overall, ang net effect niya is dili ra kayo mo taas ang blood glucose levels. Okay? So, the sugar consumption of people nowadays is relatively high. Okay? In Canada alone, an average Canadian consumes 14 teaspoons or more per day of sugar. And makita na to na siya sa ginakaon na to per minute. Some of these are obvious kay tamis, of course, na is sugar. But what about this burger? Tamis ba ning burger? Tamis ba ning fries? Dili. Pero, unsa man ninyong na-learn sa previous nga discussion nato that um, potatoes are made of starch. Kaning bun sa burger kay starch. So, after digestion, mahimura gyapon na glucose. Labi na ning potato. Kaning potato, taas kayo ni siya GI, di ba? Naadali, potatoes. Labi na yun ning ah fried potatoes, no? Okay? Or fries, okay? Nga unsa? Purely starch, okay? So remember what we've discussed no nga ang starch mahimo ra gyapon na sugar after digestion. Okay? And yeah, of course, kaning peanut butter, obvious naman ni siya kay naamang gyud ni siya sugar. Okay? So, if you typically consume 11.9 or 12 teaspoons of sugar a day, then this is what your sugar consumption would look like in a week, in a month, in a year, and lifetime. Just imagine, makaya na sa imong body og process og handle, di ba? Luoy kay imong lawas if inani. And dili pa gyud na siya pasabot nga 12 teaspoons, no? Pwede yun na nga mo beyond common na siya sa population nga biyan pa yun ani ang consumption per day. So, kulang ra ni guro pud. Okay, in reality. So, no wonder nga na onset of diseases no tungod ani. Okay, so man itong akong ingon sa previous recording no. Types of sugar. We have the intrinsic sugars that are okay because they are naturally found, they are naturally produced by fruits. Okay? Some vegetables have okay, wala ra kayo sugar ang sa vegetables. So compared to the fruits nga dagan kayo siya sugar pod. But it's okay. Okay? Katong definition sa healthy diet, di ba? It's okay if mag-consume tag fruits. Of course, kinahanglan man gyud ang fruits sa tong diet. So therefore, okay ra na ang naay sugar diha kay anyways, the intrinsic sugar man na. But what about those sugars that we intentionally add to sweeten our food such as mag-inom lugar tag ka ng kuan, milk or kape, di ba? Mag-add og sugar. So that sugar is now called as added sugars. Okay? So, sugars added to foods and beverages by manufacturers, cook, or consumer. Kani siya dapat ang walaon nato sa tong diet. Okay? As much as possible, dili na dapat na mag-add og sugar. Okay, okay na ng mga sugar nga innately found in our foods. Okay? Free sugars are added sugars plus concentrated sugars. So the concentrated sugars are found from honey, syrups, and juices. Okay? So why is sugar added to foods? Due to these reasons. Of course, obvious nga flavor enhancement, provide texture and color, permits fermentation, adds bulk, acts as a preservative, and it balances out acidity. So which of the following are risks of excess sugar consumption? Um, okay. Uh, Nutrient deficiencies, yes, of course, this would happen no, if taas kayo yung sugar intake because ganahan na kag sugar, ganahan na kag tamis, so di na ka magkaon og uban pan nga food. So, you might experience, possible nutrient deficiencies out of that. Labi na nga, wala ra bay mga nutrients ang mga high sugar foods, puros ra calories. So, very possible gid ang nutrient deficiencies. Next is development of dental caries. Yes, of course, because um, excess sugar in the teeth would be degraded by the bacteria that are residing in the mouth, producing acids which can corrode the enamel and cause cavities. Okay? Development of type 2 diabetes, it's proven. Long-term chronic consumption of high sugar foods can lead to type 2 diabetes and obesity. But what about hyperactivity in children? It's not proven yet, although naanay mga research, pero dili pa siya kaayo conclusive. So this remains to be proven. Okay, kaning hyperactivity in children. Okay? But it's wise to, to um to make the kids stay out of sugar. Kay of course, we don't want our kids to experience dental caries, di ba? Or to make them gain excess weight, di ba? Which may lead to obesity. And of course, we don't want our children to get diabetes later on. Okay? The concept of empty calories, you might be tempted to think that empty calories means walay calories, but no. Pasabot aning empty calories is puros ra calories but empty of other nutrients. Okay? So, gahatag ra siya calories, guys, pero wala siya laing micronutrients, puros ra siya calories. So, maunang mga empty calories nato. So, from this table, which do you think is considered an empty calorie? Definitely apricot is not an empty calorie. Why? Because aside from the calories, napod kay makuha ang calcium, vitamin A ug vitamin C. So, which of these are considered empty calories? Actually, ang honey o ang coke. Okay? For example, kaning coke, carbohydrates ra ang ihatag sa imuha, puros ra sugar, pero wala kaayoy other nutrients na amang galing calcium but this is very low. So, coke is considered an empty calories. Okay? Puros ra calories pero empty of other nutrients. So, parehas ni siya sa katong INQ, katong computation na to sa INQ. So kaning Coke definitely dili gyud siya nutritious. Okay, kay yang INQs ani for nutrients lower than 1. Okay? Ang honey sad considered sad siya nga empty calories. Okay? So kato, dental caries, sugars are metabolized to acids by bacteria in the mouth, causing tooth decay. Which is more cariogenic? Cariogenic means dental cavity causing food. So which of these is more likely to cause dental cavities? Bagel daw kon or kaning donut. Kay kani manggod mo stuck pamanggod siya sa imong teeth. Kani kay liquid ba ani so diretso lang tunlon, di ba? Pero actually both of these are cariogenic because your Coke is also puro sugar, di ba? So yeah. So how do we reduce risk of caries formation? Oral hygiene, di ba? Brushing, brushing of teeth twice a day. Kung mahimo, dapat mag-floss po ng teeth. Okay? And of course, limit the consumption of cariogenic or high sugar foods. Okay. We also have nutritive and artificial sweeteners. So, nutritive sweeteners are those that have calories. Okay? And they include the natural sweeteners and then the sugar alcohols. Okay? Refined sweeteners are composed of simple sugars extracted from other foods. So say for example, kanang white sugar, that's very refined. Okay? But there are those sweeteners that contain zero calories, and those sweeteners are called artificial or non-nutritive sweeteners. Okay? So, color-coded din siya, no, na ay sugar alcohol, na ay refined sweeteners, and artificial sweeteners. Okay? Mao ni siya ang measure sa relative sweetness, no? If sucrose ang basehan, ang saccharin is 300 times sweeter than sucrose. Ang aspartame is 200 times sweeter than sucrose. Acesulfame K is mga around 180, 190 times sweeter than sucrose. Diba? So as you can see, your artificial sweeteners are very sweet materials. Okay? Sugar alcohols or polyols, examples are sorbitol, mannitol, and xylitol. So they are considered as sugar replacers. So they are still considered nutritive sweeteners because they provide 2 calories per gram. So they are only found in commercial foods. Bacteria that produce cavity causing acid don't metabolize sugar alcohols. We also have aspartame. Aspartame is considered an artificial sweetener, but it's odd from the group because unlike the other artificial sweeteners, aspartame yields 4 calories per gram, the same as katong mga nutritive sweeteners. Because it's made of 2 amino acids, and amino acids have calories because they are components of the protein baya. So these amino acids are called phenylalanine and aspartic acid. And those foods that contain aspartame are contraindicated in PKU, which is a genetic disorder. PKU means phenylketonuria. And in those phenylketonurics, no, they are unable to metabolize phenylalanine, leading to uh, blood phenylalanine levels that can be toxic. So since they cannot metabolize phenylalanine, then they need to restrict their diet with phenylalanine. So, naama na siya sa mga labels, guys, sa foods. If naay phenylalanine, para ma-warn no ang mga phenylketonuria nga dili mag-consume ana since taas man siya phenylalanine. Okay? Saccharin is another artificial sweetener, no? Which was found out to be safe. Okay? Mauni ang misconception sa artificial sweeteners because many think that artificial sweeteners are bad, but actually not. Okay? Because these sweeteners are consumed in little amounts, in moderate amounts, no? So since we just sprinkle of these artificial sweeteners can sweeten a cup of coffee or a cup of any beverage, then there is really no need to put a lot of these sweeteners in our food. So, uh, according to studies, safe ra sila. Okay, including saccharin. Acesulfame potassium as is another artificial sweetener that cannot be digested by the body, thus provide zero calories. This is not affected by heat so can be used in cooking. And it's 200 times sweeter than table sugar. Okay? Acesulfame K is better than aspartame because ang aspartame, kung lutuon ni mo siya or i- i-heat ni mo siya, mupait siya. Kani kay wala siya inana nga characteristic. Sucralose is the one that I recommend if the patient wishes to use artificial sweetener because it's the one that has been studied to be safe. Okay? Kani siya ang pinaka most studied no nga safe gyud siya. And one of the most famous brand names of this product name is Splenda. Okay? Splenda kay brand name ni siya sa product name ng sucralose. Okay? And it's much sweeter than the previously discussed artificial sweeteners. It's 600 times sweeter than the table sugar. Okay? So, this is very beneficial guys, especially if ang diabetic no kay ganahan kay tamis, dili siya ready mag-draw out from consuming sweet foods kay mao man ang diabetes man good. Usually uh, it makes the sufferer no crave more sweet foods, okay? As if the disease wants you dead yun. So mauna siya ang effect sa disease. Okay? So to manage that, pwede ta mag-recommend og artificial sweetener para at least ma-enjoy gyapon ni diabetic ang iyahang coffee, ang iyahang beverage nga sweet gyapon pero without having to worry no nga ay motaas akong blood sugar ani kay tamis. No, dili na inana kung artificial sweetener atong ginagamit because artificial sweeteners do not contain any calories and are not absorbed as glucose. So therefore, wala tay problema sa blood glucose levels if mauni atong ginagamit. Okay? But again, moderation gihapon guys. Dili gyapon pwede nga palapita. Okay? So can sugar-free diet help with weight loss? Yes, if bawasan natong added sugars. Okay? Okay na lang ng mga sugar nga nasa tong fruit, mauna lang na. So there's really no need for us to put more sugar sa ato ang sa atong beverage, okay? Mas mahimutang healthy ana if i-lessen natong added sugars. Okay? And definitely maka-help na sa pag-manage sa weight. Okay? Because actually kaning sugar ang labi na kung excess kaning sugar ang gapatambok yun sa isa ka tao. Not actually fat. It's sugar. So that's why kinahanglan yun nato siya i-limit. Okay? If we want to manage our weight. So how much carbohydrate do I need? Better consult the PDRI kay ang PDRI is sa Filipino and I think sa mga Canadians ni siya no. But dili ra gyapon layo ang atong mga needs diri, no. So ang fiber nato is 20 to 25 ba ang RNI nato. Okay? And according to the definition of the World Health Organization, 10% ra or less than 10% dapat ang atong intake sa sugar. And ang optimal is less than 5%. Diba? So there's really no need to use added sugars anymore. Okay? That would help us become much healthier. So, as what I have discussed, muna yung mga sources of carbohydrates. And the rest of the slides, I will just leave this for your own reading. Okay? So, I think that's all. So, if you have questions, you can definitely ask me through GC. Okay? Sa GC lang. Kay para makit-an sa tanan, kay basig same ra mo concern. So, at least, matubag pud na ako ang question sa uban. Okay? So that's it. And let's proceed to the next part of chapter 4, which is proteins. Thank you.